Group 1, group discussion assignment. So today we're going to discuss a topic which is how well aeronautical, civil and mechanical engineers help to address the challenge of the sustainable development of modern society and the concern of climate change. So we got some questions. So the first one is problems and challenges and their reasons. This is the first thing we're going to discuss. So Altin, would you like to make a start?
Why not? So what I did was went through a variety of websites and I tried to figure out what the main points, the main problems were that every website would mention, and I came up with 5 main points. Those would be, first of all, lack of good data, and that comes from the fact that if you look at most reports out there, the dates vary from 2000 to 2005, 6, maybe up to 2009, but nothing recent. Secondly, there is a lack of financial resources, and not as much as the total funding that each government has, but the funding that goes into those actions. Thirdly is instability, and that goes to developing countries mainly, that there are a lot more priorities than creating those sustainable societies. The fourth one would be natural occurrences, earthquakes, tsunamis, things like that affect the economical development of countries. And the next one is the most important, I would say, is the governmental conflict between immediate profit and investment into sustainable technologies. And that basically means is that a lot of governments choose to invest in non-renewable technologies that now are on high demand, just because that gives them higher profit rather than invest for future profit. And lastly is the perception of people for a sustainable society. Everyone thinks that you can go on and on, just an unending development, but that's not true, because even if you have renewable ways of making electricity, say a wind turbine, the wind turbine has to be made by certain elements, and these are not
materials from the earth.
Precisely.
And by that time, it would already have the materials within the earth will not have been natural anymore, because it's already been affected due to the neglection on the priorities that they have listed for themselves. So when they, because I agree with you on that point when you mentioned their priorities, and I think because their priorities have been switched, and it is understandable in the perspective of the humans, like because when they look at it, it's about to grow the business. It's about coming up with new designs. It's about to help transport whatever humanity's needs, because it's where they profit from. And the problem is they, because due to that neglection, the other side of it is that they're affecting the earth naturally and harm the natural environment, which would be much more harmful in the next generation, because they could be breathing that same polluted air, and that would be considered natural to them. Like they would, and perhaps maybe when they're in natural places, or if there's any by that time, they wouldn't even like learn how to adapt, or like even perhaps breathe properly. It's like they're just they're used to be in a more polluted environment.
So Murari, have you got anything to say for the problems and challenges?
Kind of, yeah, because for example, with Altin's example of the wind turbine, so they're using. So a lot of people create wind turbines thinking, yeah, okay, it's a renewable energy, it's wind power. But what actually goes into making the wind turbine first to get that renewable power? Materials. It could be metals, carbon fiber, you name it. Those resources aren't renewable. So in essence, to build one of them, you're harming the environment in the first place. So until we find a proper, fully renewable, 100% natural form, we're always going to be hurting the environment.
So
Exactly.
if you're using non-renewables to create renewables.
Exactly.
So
Which would eventually run out. So if they were to think the same thing, you know, the next generation, they want to continue within that same thing, time would run out from them. Because even though we've been doing it for a long time, it's already been noticed earlier within the stage that there's only a limit for it. So
exactly. So it would be more sufficient to say we're looking to use renewable energy to make more renewable energy.
Exactly. So yeah, and also with other designs, you have to think about both ways, because you can't just neglect humanity's needs just like that. I mean, as you can see, it's hard up to the point that they're still continuing to neglecting the environmental side, but they have to both be as equals in order to progress somewhere within, you know, the natural environment.
I would like to discuss the problems and challenges, but particularly for air transport field. As we all know, the aircraft industry is just increasing year after year due to the high demand on air transport.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, so according to the statistics portal, from 2004 till 2017, which is a 13-year period, the number of flights per annum increased by 13 million,
Wow.
which is 1 million flights for each year, extra 1 million flights.
That is huge.
Yeah, that is huge. And the International Air Transport Association has declared that the contribution of air transport to greenhouse gases like the carbon dioxide emissions from the air transport is about 3%, which is really, really high and significant. So this rate will just keep increasing as the air transport market keeps growing throughout the time. So thankfully some companies tried to, actually they took steps towards reducing the amount of fuel consumed per passenger. For example, the mass aircraft manufacturers such as Boeing and Airbus, they introduced a new single-aisle aircraft. For Boeing, it's called Boeing 737 MAX, and for Airbus, they have introduced the new Airbus A320 Neo.
Neo.
Yes, I heard of that.
Yeah, these aircrafts, they consume 20% less fuel for each passenger. And for Alaska Airlines, which is a US Airlines, they have flew about 75 commercial flights using biofuels, which are made, I think, of cooking oil, sugar canes, and everything. And they have an ambition to make all their flights using biofuels. So I think this is really good.
That's a huge positive effect. It's definitely starting from somewhere.
There is also another factor where some aircraft engineers, like aircraft designers, Airbus and Boeing and Bombardier and everything, they are also looking into essentially scrapping the jet turbine and turning it into full electric. I can only see one problem with that, and that is, where are you going to get the electricity from to run to power the electric turbine? Hydro energy, solar, wind, they all come from non-renewable resources to build the power plants in the first place.
So for the second question, what are the concepts and definition of sustainable development, a description on a sustainable society, and what are the relations between sustainable development and climate change? So we're going to answer them like each part alone. So for the definition of sustainable development, Altin, you said.
So I would say sustainable development is the way to balance our needs and the resources we have. So yes, we want to provide us with everything we want, but at the same time we should be able to allow nature to provide us with the resources. That would be my definition of it.
Murari, what's your opinion?
Sustainable development basically means development that can run on nothing but renewable resources.
So totally 100% renewable.
Totally 100% renewable.
I agree on the part where he mentions renewable sources, but in this area I'd like to talk about the aircraft side of it. From the way I see it, as you mentioned about what was it, electric power?
Electric engines. Yeah.
Electric engines for the aircraft. To be honest, I think just by hearing from it, it would have so many disadvantages. I think the mechanical one that are used at this moment are actually reliable. The only change that, not the only, sorry, the changes that I would make to it if possible is, as they've mentioned, the renewable source. So if there was some kind of renewable source that the aircraft engine could use as a fuel, so therefore not only could it, not pollute the air as well as, just traveling, it could also, make the atmosphere much better since it's constantly flying most of the time.
For example, hydrogen.
Okay, hydrogen, for example, it could spread hydrogen throughout the atmosphere. It keeps the environment great. At the same time, it's also thinking about how much of it is going to be in there, because you got to understand that the weight of the engine is so much heavier. So, while it's very reliable for transportation, you are also got to look at the weight as well to see if it could carry it, if it would have enough thrust, there and then. That's from where I see it. Yeah.
So I think all the definitions you have said reflects on the formal definitions that you can find in the articles and textbooks. The definition I have found in some websites, it says that sustainable development is that development that provides the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the next generations to meet their needs in the future. So, anyone got a description on a sustainable society? Shall we start with you, Altin?
I think we've mentioned it already, that a sustainable society would be the one that is built upon balance between resources and our needs. That would be a sustainable society.
So a sustainable society,
obviously at the same time providing a healthy environment, living environment for us.
I believe same thing. I think that also the question, if just by hearing what you said a minute ago, I think it was actually also an answer, because it's something that, because everyone wants to try and make futuristic things without looking at the effects of what it does to nature, or the fuel that it would use or anything. So I agree on the part where it says we use what we have in the present, but that could and also that could benefit the future in an environmental way.
Mm-hmm. So, what are the relations between sustainable development and climate change? I think I'm gonna give it a start with this one. So, I think that the link between climate change and sustainable development is straightforward, because developing sustainability reduces the effect of climate change on the environment, and the reverse is true. If we didn't implement plans to develop our sustainability, then climate change effects will increase, actually, putting the present and next generations in danger. So, as I said, developing our sustainability means less harm coming from the climate change, or at least we can cope with it, so that it does not affect our health and our existence on Earth.
I'd say what you said is pretty.
Yeah, I agree.
What I've got.
It pretty much covers it, to be honest, because you have mentioned all the general aspects of it. But I would also mention that, because I understand, especially in this time, that it is hard to find that sustainability. I would say the next thing after would be to maintain the current sustainability that it's at the moment, because there is potential that at this constant rate that it could go down, it could go worse. And the fact that, as you mentioned earlier, regarding sustainability of the trees being cut down into being grown instead of it, and also trying to use renewable sources is a start from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it is slow, but the fact that it is being maintained, it does show results. Whether it's fast or slow, but it's showing a positive result.
It's like a dual relationship. Climate change does affect sustainable development, and sustainable development does affect climate change.
Yeah, so it's like there are inversely proportional. So if
So I believe it's to change one would change the other.
Yeah.
So if you
exactly.
if you have enough resources, or like the fact that you could implement, which I would say in this case would be towards the environment and the resources, that would also affect climate change, because it would come from most like the atmosphere, the things that we do and use.
So for our third point, the battle to climate change, engineering technology and solutions. Have you got anything to say about this, Altin?
I do. What I found is that engineering technologies are classed into two specific categories. One of them is solar radiation management, which I will talk about in a second, and the next one is what we all are familiar with, the carbon dioxide removal. Carbon dioxide removal can be biofuels, can be carbon capture and storage, can be
the CCS devices.
Exactly, planting more trees and plants that absorb
more
more
oxygen.
Yeah. So, but the most interesting I found was, and I've never heard of it before, was the solar radiation management, which includes techniques that seek to reduce the amount of sunlight that is absorbed.
Well, that's impressive.
It is impressive, because they talk about, there are 4 different types. So surface-based, which basically means protecting or expanding polar sea ice and glaciers, so more of it is reflected back.
Yeah.
You have troposphere-based, like marine cloud brightening by different spray, so the clouds are more bright, they reflect more light. Upper atmosphere-based, creating reflective aerosols again, and space-based by satellites with mirrors or technology like that.
I'm not sure if they are or not, but they all sound like renewable sources that could actually be put into better use, like that could affect the the climate change, because we're using it like within the environment. I think it could affect that, give it within a week, a month, that like with that speed, if they was to implement it and use it.
Because the main point of climate change is global warming, and global warming comes from the amount of sunlight. So if you can take that out,
to reverse the effect.
Exactly.
Murari, have you got anything to say about that?
I can understand Alton's point with, say, for example, spraying clouds to make them more reflective. But the only problem is, my only concern is, what would the effect be on the environment from that? Would they be 100% natural? Or, because whatever it sounds like, it sounds very synthetic.
That sounds
of course it would have to be. I'd say, of course it would it depends how you define natural, because I'm sure the elements you would use, you would find them in nature. But at the same time, I get what you mean, but that's why it's not developed at the moment, this sort of technology, because we don't know the effect on the humans. Exactly.
I think this idea came up to the surface when that volcano happened, explosion in 2009 in Indonesia. So there was like a big explosion of that volcano, and the eruptions of that volcano went up to the sky, and there was like sulfur dioxide, and sulfur dioxide, like as a compound, it reflects the light. So when it covered all the sky of that particular area of Indonesia, scientists say that the temperature of that particular area was decreased by approximately a half degree of Celsius, so 0.5 Celsius. So I think from this perspective, this idea came up to the surface. So it sounds promising, maybe hard to implement, but hopefully they can implement it as soon as possible. So for the last one, which is general actually, what can you do or how to make yourself as the next generation of engineers in your specific subject area to make contribution to the sustainable development? Shall we start with you, Altin?
I think the fact that what we need to do is, or what would be beneficial would be research, come up with new ideas, try them, put them out there for other people to see, and just go with that, and that's it. Just strive for innovation, really.
Murari, what's your opinion?
is to try and develop a new method of a fully renewable method of sourcing energy.
Raiyadh?
I'm looking at it on a similar perspective as Altin, like when it comes to design and engineering, but also I don't know why I believe that most of the designs that come up on the projects, like when you just see them on schematics, I feel like they haven't had the chance to be implemented.
Yes.
In the real world, they haven't actually been put on to test, so to get like an accurate result of whether it works or it doesn't work. So I believe, as well as designing and for better use by using renewable resources, and giving out the output of it, instead of being like fumes or carbon monoxide or stuff like that, it would give out just the air that will help us, or plants or animals for that matter. Yeah,
So I think we all agree on the same perspective that the next generation of engineers should be like innovative and introducing new ideas.
Think outside the box.
Yeah, think outside the box,
Exactly.
exactly. So about introducing new ideas, I think I've got an example here. So as a future aeronautical engineer, I think that introducing not electrical aircraft engines but hybrid engines,
Hybrid, yeah.
and there's a difference.
I'd agree
So
with that.
hybrid, I think they are more realistic,
Yeah.
because if the engines were hybrid, then they would be effective in terms of climate change.
Yep.
And introducing them as cost-effective hybrid aircraft engines might revolutionize really the market of air transport, because with those engines, hybrid engines, airplanes will emit less greenhouse gases, and this way the contribution of air transport towards carbon dioxide emissions will be less.
Would that be the only source of fuel, the greenhouse gas?
No, not like the cars. Like a hybrid car uses both fuel and electricity.
Okay.
So there is some fuel to be burned,
Yes.
but less.
Okay.
This is the difference.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
So more
I'm
realistic
guessing
and more cost
if you
effective.
develop more biofuels, then
Yeah.
it goes even lower.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. So if there's a chance, because if you was to look at it from an engine perspective, it would be good based on aircraft and transportation. The part that you got to look at to affect the environment is the fuel source. If the fuel source is still harmful but is not used a lot, just like a backup or for a power up, then I think that would be a progressive state, especially for transportation,
Yeah.
since it's flying 24/7. So yeah.
Because I can see where you come with that point of a hybrid engine, because if you think about it, when an aircraft is pushed back, it's got the little tug pushing it, but as soon as it needs to taxi all the way to the runway, what do you hear? The pilot's increasing the throttle to nudge it forward. So if it's a hybrid, it'll be an electric motor that spins the turbine
And used
faster
to
to
taxi,
generate
yeah.
thrust.
Exactly. Yeah.
So all that fuel they use from the gate to the runway
Do you mean
Can be
taxi
saved.
and like
Yeah,
can be saved. And then the turbines can probably get power once you go to the runway and they actually require that thrust.
Mm.
That's actually a good point. I like that.
Exactly. So I think we came to the end.
I believe we covered most of the bases, but speaking of from experience and the fact that I studied it earlier,
Yeah.
the reason why they do the taxiing
Yeah.
all the way to like the runway is because I believe it was back in the day when the planes used to do that themselves. They used to lose a lot of fuel.
Yeah.
Which means
Yeah.
that by the time they end up in the air, they wouldn't even have much to get to their destination. So that's the reason why they use that. But then also they lose more fuel. So well, it's understandable, yeah.
So I think we got to the end of that group discussion.
Yes.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Wait.
It's-
Yeah.